On Christmas Day 2009, a 23-year-old Nigerian youth attempted to blow up a plane en route from Amsterdam to Detroit using explosives that he'd hidden in his underwear. We're all living with the aftermath. Star Wars-style full-body scanners at the airport. Some really tough questions about profiling of passengers. I travel by plane quite a bit, and I've got to admit, I'm getting a little bit nervous. You know, after the shoe bomber, they made us take our shoes off going through security. Now, More seriously, who is this young man, and how did he become a terrorist? If you go into Wikipedia, you'll learn that Umar's mother comes from Yemen, and his father is one of the richest men in Africa. That kind of blew my myths about where terrorists came from. We think of terrorists as people who have limited opportunity, few choices. Umar had lots of choice. He chose to go to the UK to study to be an engineer. He wanted to study Arabic in Yemen, and it was also in Yemen where he participated in Jihad 101 with Al-Qaeda. Thank God his plan failed. You may be thinking to yourself, what does a Nigerian learning how to be a jihadist in Yemen, trying to blow a plane up over Detroit, have to do with Calgary or Calgarians? Other than beefing up security at the airport, what are we going to do to deal with Al-Qaeda or terrorism right here in Calgary? This answer may also surprise you. There are lots of people right here in Calgary, some pretty ordinary folks, who are doing lots. They're wielding hope like an axe. Let me tell you how, and let me tell you why. I'm founder of Bridges Social Development, a very small humanitarian organization, one of the many little NGOs that's sprouting up here in Calgary. We take Calgarians, experts in their field, doctors, nurses, midwives, lawyers, judges, journalists, teachers, politicians, management gurus, to places like Yemen, where they train their counterparts, male and female, in these countries. We started in Yemen. Since then, since 2002, we've done projects in Egypt, Oman, India, Nepal. It's amazing what Canadians will do. And let me just give you an example so you can get it in your mind. If a small hospital in a rural community in Yemen decided that in their emergency ward they'd like to set up a triage center, rather than having hundreds of patients and their families clamoring at the front door of the hospital, they want to sort their patients. They would come to Bridges and ask for help, and we would put together teams. Emergency physicians, triage nurses, people who know how to train people in healthcare, and most of all, somebody who knows how to run a project. And we would support that community in building a triage center and implementing. And we do the same if it was another kind of project, law, journalism, whatever. All of our board of directors are Calgarians, every one of them. Many of our volunteers come from Calgary. Lots of our donors, we raise money for just disbursements. Our donors are Calgarians, Calgary-based companies, individuals. This little NGO has a huge connection to Calgary. So you're probably wondering, why Yemen? It's not the most logical place in the world for people from Calgary to go to do this training. In fact, until the underwear bomber, there were lots of Calgarians who wouldn't have been able to find Yemen on a map. There's a human connection here. When we're dealing with humans, there usually is. Many of the people who ended up on Bridges' board of directors had worked in Yemen at some point in time in the 1990s. I was one of those people. I worked for Nexen Inc., a Canadian company that produces oil there. On the ground in this country, we could see what was going on. Yemen may be in the oil-rich Arabian Peninsula, but believe me, it's an anomaly. That country deals with a long-standing civil war in the north, a secessionist movement in the south, and every day families struggle to put food on the table and find jobs. In 2007 and 2008, Save the Children identified Yemen as the third worst place in the world to be a mother. Last year, they moved up to sixth worst place. In the Global Gender Index put out by World Economic Forum, Yemen has ranked the very bottom of that index for the last 2 years. On the ground, we could see how this country struggled to educate its young people, especially their girls. By the end of the 1990s, they were achieving success. Young women were graduating from university, even from professional schools. And the challenge was, how do you integrate them into a predominantly male workforce? Yemen's a very poor country. They know they have to use all their resources, including human resources, and they thought Canadians could help. And so they invited us, and we accepted the invitation. This is what Yemen looks like. This is a wadi, or dry river valley, in the Hadramaut region. It's close to where Osama bin Laden was born. We work in off-the-beaten-track places, and we have to pay a lot of attention to security. In 2008, we're getting concerned because we could start to see Al-Qaeda was there, and we were being targeted as Westerners. By 2009, we had to put in place a moratorium on travel to Yemen. I've been there 50 or 60 times. This breaks my heart, personally. We had a town hall a couple years ago, and some Yemen youth who are studying here in Calgary, and I'm really happy some of them are here with us today. They came to that town hall, and they asked some really tough questions. Our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our friends back home in Yemen are being co-opted by Al-Qaeda. What can bridges do? What could bridges do here in Canada to deal with the threat of Al-Qaeda in Yemen? We turned the question back to these young people and asked them, what do you want to do? And we spent the next 18 months with these young people talking about those options. We met at the university, we met in our backyards. We had experts who are trained in facilitation talk through the options with these young people. Some of them aren't going to return to Yemen, but they knew they had to do something. Over time, the reach of these dialogue circles grew wider, and other people who care about at-risk youth, including Aboriginal youth right here in Canada, started to participate. The similarities in experience and risk were a shock for all of us. And out of that dialogue, very honest dialogue, emerged a program we call Unveiling Youth Potential. We've been piloting this program this year, right here in Calgary, with that same group of Yemeni youth. We're going to be conducting pilots with other Muslim youth diaspora groups, Aboriginal youth, and we're going to be taking the program to India this year. In fact, the program has been designed to be adaptable to at-risk communities where youth are at risk anywhere in the world. And it's open source, so please, we invite you, take it and use it and tell us what happened. There are lots of youth leadership and engagement programs out there. So what makes our program unique? Let me go through the phases of the program quickly with you, and I'll highlight a few points. In the first phase, engagement, we spend a lot of time. We don't just jump into leadership. We spend time with the youth in their own communities, if we can, to understand what it is that drove them to ask for help outside to deal with a problem in their own community. That takes a lot of guts to do that. Sometimes it's corruption, sometimes it's rising suicide, crime. With the Yemeni youth, it was a toxic combination of demographics and economics. A bulging youth population in Yemen coinciding with diminishing economic opportunities, all stirred together in an explosive mix by Al-Qaeda. We also spend time to understand what's going on in that community where that youth comes from. Are the elders going to be their allies? Does the local government care what they have to say? And we look really closely at those young people. Do they have the compassion and the drive they're going to need to lead change from within in their own communities? After that period of engagement, we ask the youth, do you want to participate in leadership training? We don't decide for them. No company decides for them. No government decides. They decide. And if they do, we've got back-to-back leadership program. And then they make another decision. Some will decide after that leadership training to participate as a social entrepreneur. And we'll partner them with a mentor, often a Calgarian. Some won't decide to do that, and we have to accept that. We're a small NGO, and that took a lot on our part to accept that you're going to be training people who are not going to move forward with social entrepreneurial projects in your timeline. But we're focused on quality, not quantity. We want to find the next Martin Luther King in Aboriginal Canada, or Yemen, or wherever. So what can you teach young people about leadership? Of course, we teach the nuts and bolts of project management and how to be a social entrepreneur. But before we do that, we throw 3 key balls into this training hopper. The first one is wisdom, and we've talked a lot about that today. If you don't know what is inside you that allowed you to hitch your passions to something greater than yourself, you're not going to be able to do it in somebody else, support it or inspire it. The second ball we throw in is community mapping. We give them tools to not just see the liabilities, which are really obvious to them, but to see the assets in their own community as well. And the third ball we throw in is change leadership. Younger generation can really not be too positive about the idea of top-down change, and they can often underestimate the impact of bottom-up change. We try to teach gentle change leadership and how you bring those two together. And out of that funnel emerges enhanced youth potential. Some of these youth will become social entrepreneurs. Every single one of them is able to see themselves as a leader and a role model. So what kind of projects do they take on? I'm going to share some examples from the Yemeni youth that we piloted early this year. Some are working on projects here in Calgary, and some are working on projects back in Yemen. Sahar, an environmental student, is working on a project to deal with waste management. Luai, in the blue shirt, really likes how Habitat for Humanity at the University of Calgary takes students from U of C to Mexico to build homes for the poor. And he wonders, why can't you do the same thing in Yemen? Take students from the University of Sana'a to Sada to build homes that have been blown up in the civil war there. Ahmed in the blue hoodie wants to look at small-scale alternative energy, wind and solar. Rezkula, an engineer, wants to teach IT and engineering students in Yemen about how to think with innovation. And Omar and Ayub, who I'm delighted are here with us today, are going to roll this program out in Yemen during their summer break in partnership with youth organizations back in their home. Do we need another youth program? Do we really think that this program is going to make a difference? Let me give you an example of what youth potential can look like when it's ignited. Remember the underwear bomber? After his failed attempt, Britain's Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, called a meeting of world leaders to talk about how Friends of Yemen could help that country not slip into failed state status. Another Yemen youth, one in Montreal, phoned me right after that announcement. His name's Rafat, and he said, "Can you believe it? They're having a conference to talk about Yemen, and nobody's asked young people for their opinion." Young people in Yemen represent nearly 70% of that population, and no one had bothered to ask them what they thought. With a little guidance and coaching, Rafat was able to gather like-minded individuals around him, including Allah, who's here today, and Ahmed, another Calgarian. And in 3 weeks, these young people were able to put together a web platform called Resonate Yemen. They reached out to Yemen youth around the world and gathered inputs from 7,000 youth. Those very constructive ideas were presented to Gordon Brown and world leaders at the end of January. And the best news of all, that youth channel is opened wide. That's exactly the kind of potential that we want to ignite with this program. Hope or cynicism, that may be the key moral and political choice of our time. In times of uncertainty or conflict, it's really easy to believe that you can't make a difference, and nobody's really going to blame you. For Yemen's youth, the possibility of their country becoming a failed state remains quite real. For most at-risk communities, there is no benevolent tribal leader charging in from the horizon. There's no cowboy in a white Stetson who's going to single-handedly save them. It's the people in the community who can do something. They know the issues that are critical. They know how to deal with the redressable injustices in their own community. Their goal is not to build the perfect system, the perfect community, or the perfect peace. It's just not practical. But they can work on things that matter to them and that are feasible. We can wield hope like an axe. Hope is an act done in good faith. It's never callous and it's never cynical. And whether you live in Nigeria, Yemen, Detroit, or Calgary, you can wield hope like an axe. Thank you.